You're now tuned into Nah, It's Not Just Me podcast with Mr. MoTo. Let's talk about it. Well, they say love don't cost a thing, but yeah, it's pretty pricey to date, especially in the 2020s. Since last summer, it cost about $200 to come out the house. And with inflation and this new Trump administration, I don't know, man. The prices of dinner and a movie, yeah, they definitely gonna go up. So you say to yourself, can you date while broke? I don't think broke is the right term, but we'll talk about that later on. Can you date while financially struggling? You're not prioritizing, you don't plan, you don't budget, then yeah, I don't think dating is for you because you got to do a lot of those things in order to be able to date properly. And by date properly, I mean, be able to form a genuine connection with somebody. But the question is, can you do so on a tight budget? I think it's possible. In this episode, we're going to be talking about pretty much dating on a budget, some of the societal pressures that make dating these days kind of difficult when you ain't got it like that. And what's the difference between a man financially struggling and a woman financially struggling while trying to navigate the dating scene? Nah, It's Not Just Me podcast. Let's talk about it. You're now tuned into Nah, It's Not Just Me podcast with Mr. MoTo. Let's talk about it. So like I said, since last summer, it's been pretty pricey to step outside. Now listen, you can step outside on a budget. I'm just saying, if you want to do the normal things that you do, like, go out, hang out, chill, transportation costs, the activities, the food, all that, the vibe, it all costs. But if you're going out on a date, these days, with inflation and, everything went up. It's the truth. The cost of living, it's pretty pricey to live in New York City. And I ain't gonna lie, across the country, it's pretty pricey. So dating might be something that you really have to budget for. It's like a line item now. So for example, the average cost of a date in New York City, and that's just by the standards of, a typical date, activity, go out to eat, maybe hookah and drinks afterwards, or maybe get some ice cream or something. But just some form of that. Probably run you around $200, and that's like $100 per person, which is not bad. But again, if you're not in the position for that, how can you still date and manage to stay financially stable, if you will? Well, planning, budgeting. For example, our biggest influences these days is social media. We got to keep it 100. But if you utilize social media in the proper way instead of glamorizing it for what you see, there's a ton of information on there. Yeah, I get it. We want to go on those glamorous, shiny dates and all that. We want to do all that fun stuff. But sometimes you're not in the position to do that. You don't got it like that financially. Doesn't mean you don't have to date. It means you can find alternatives. There's a ton of alternatives when it comes to social media. There are social media accounts that are dedicated solely to helping you find cheap dates, activities to do. What I'm saying is there's so many different tools out there that can help you date on a budget so you don't have to feel like you're broke. For example, you got websites like secretsnyc.co, or if you're on Instagram, secrets_NYC. They put up a bunch of activities. They put up budget-friendly dates. They put up the extravagant stuff too, but they give you options. And you go check it out. You have food bloggers that talk about food from all around the city. Different places around the country too. Here are a few. You have Brian Can't Stop Eating. He shows off so much good food that I ain't gonna front. I started following him just because of that. Yardy Reactions, Wavy Boy Smith, NYC's Finest Eats. There are a ton of social media accounts out there that can help you navigate finding a great place to eat at a cheap cost, finding activities to do. A little bit of research can help you go a long way when it comes to planning and curating a dope date at a budget-friendly cost. And not to mention, if you're not a social media person, there are apps for that. Now, if you're on dating apps such as Black, Hinged, and Tinder, they have affiliates like OpenTable to make a reservation for dinner around the city. And again, they're categorized in budget-friendly way. However, just a little bit of research. If you're not on social media, you can use this app called Schmore. S''MORE. Pretty much, it's like a Reddit for dating. Activities, restaurants, just a ton of things to do. All there at the tip of your fingers, swipe of a finger, one of them. But it's right there in your hand. There's ways to plan budget-friendly dating right in your hand when you're just looking at your phone. You just got to do a little bit of research. That's all. Put a little effort into it. Be intentional. What's up, y'all? It's Mr. MoTo, and do remember, Thursday nights, 7 p.m., Nah, It's Not Just Me podcast. Tap in. You know we always talking about something. Like I said, it looks great on Instagram, but we don't have to play the keeping up with what everybody else is doing. We're not the Kardashians. We're not these influencers that are kind of sort of compensated for visiting the places that they go to. Because again, their influencer status earns them that space. Unfortunately, we're all not influencers. But if you plan and you take your time and you kind of carve out your own path, do your own thing. Don't fall for the pressures of social media and viral trends just because that's what's happening in the now. But for real, are you there for the connection or are you there for the glitz and the glam, the shiny object, the expense that comes with that? You got to know the difference. Now, culturally, we get a lot of the pressure. And by we, I mean men. We got to handle everything. But I agree with that. I don't think it's wrong that if a man asks a woman on a date that he needs to prepare to take care and accommodate for everything. Whether it's travel, food, activity, all that. It should be on your dime. You ask that person out. It's what you're supposed to do. Now, just because you're supposed to do it doesn't mean you have to go outside of your means to do it. Work within your budget. You don't want to drive yourself broke. You don't want to be financially irresponsible just because you're trying to impress somebody. It's only going to set you back and it's not going to set y'all forward. Just because all you're doing is appeasing that person's material want versus their emotional want, their connection, if you will. You want to connect on a real level, not on a material level. It's just the realities of it. So yes, I believe men should be the ones that take care of the date if, in fact, they ask you out. Now, ladies, don't take advantage of that just because, you're hungry and you need a meal because, kind of sort of, that's what it's coming off as these days. You could take a man out as well. You could also fit the bill. If you ask the man out, why not? I think that's a boss woman move. You ask them out, you say, hey man, I'd like to take you out sometime. You take care of it. Once in a while, if you do that, that's cool. It should be fine. And fellas, don't feel emasculated because they do that. Ain't nothing wrong with that. All right? Don't let your pride and your ego get in the way. That's usually what ruins a lot of stuff too. Especially if you ain't got it. You might feel like, oh, less of a man. Nah. She might understand where you at. But we'll talk about communication a little bit later. So all in all, we got to kind of understand, yes, we have gender roles that are traditional, but again, can be tweaked. We're living in a whole different time now. $20 don't stretch the way it used to. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, maybe we should really start to look at, all right, men and women, women and men, we need to do this together. We need to have balance. Yes, a man's traditional roles of handling it and taking care of everything should be upheld. However, once in a while, ladies, it's cool for y'all to say, hey, I got this. I'm going to take care of that. I got us. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying. What's going on, y'all? It's Mr. MoTo, and let me tell you about Camp What About Us. It's the adult summer camp that you don't want to miss, all right? It's going down June the 13th to June the 15th. We got basketball, softball, kickball, flag football, wall climbing, go-karting. We got tons of events, tons of activities to get into. Oh man, everything from wellness to chilling and just, having a good time. Being nostalgic about being a kid again, man. Remember, June 13th to June 15th, campwhataboutUs.com. Sign up. All right. So you've done the math and you realize you can date, you got a little budget for it, but you could either work within your means or go outside your means. Sometimes you might want to get a little creative with the dating experience versus trying to really go outside of your means to, again, impress somebody. It shouldn't be about the material things. It should be about the experience. But here's some ideas of what you could do to create alternatives for expensive dates. Imagine a nice spring or summer day. Have a picnic. All you need is a blanket, some good food. Maybe get yourself a little Bluetooth speaker so you can play some music in the background. Create a vibe, create a nice little atmosphere. Listen, you're in nature. It's sunny. You got birds flying and chirping. It's perfect atmosphere for a nice, intimate, but not too much kind of date. It makes more sense and it saves you more sense as well. See what I did there? Now, if you guys have been dating for, a little while, maybe it's getting a little bit too expensive to keep going out every weekend. How about suggest, I'm going to cook you dinner, but at least make sure you know how to cook first. Don't just get in there and just start doing all types of you don't want that. But suggesting cooking dinner creates for a more intimate setting where you two can cook together and get to know each other in the kitchen, really chop it up, figuratively and literally. But it'll be so much more of a connection being built. Y'all doing this dope activity together. Cooking is very intimate and very it's close to the heart. It's one of my favorite things to do. Or if you've been on social media and you look at some of those suggestions that I made, they tend to really suggest some dope outdoor activities that you can partake in that don't have to be too costly. Some might even be free. You can head to the museum. Usually they just ask for a little donation or at most $25 to see the exhibits, especially if that person's into that. It's about being intentional and creative. If you could do those two things, you can plan a dope date that doesn't have to cost you a lot of money or anything, if that. Just put a little bit of effort into it. In reality, it's about the experience over the expense. Just because you spend X amount of dollars doesn't mean you've created a dope experience. It just means you spent a lot of money. For what? What if you didn't even have a good time? It's money down the drain. Versus you curate a dope experience, a dope vibe that you could always go back to and remember and be like, yo, that was such a great experience. I remember when you did this, or I remember when we went here and we got to talking for hours. We talked until the sun come up and we ain't even realize it. Create memories over unnecessary expenses. I'm just saying. You're now tuned into Nas Not Just Me podcast with Mr. MoTo. Let's talk about it. All right, so you've budgeted. You've tried to come up with creative alternatives to expensive dates. You came up with some. However, what if, you still have to go to these fancy restaurants? How do you tell someone you can't afford this fancy restaurant and not kill the vibe? Because, talking about money while dating can feel like you're trying to defuse a bomb. You don't know which wire to snip because it all might go boom. You might be trying to date somebody and impress them, and you just don't got it like that. You'll drive yourself broke. You might not even be able to drive yourself there because you can't even afford a car. But here's how to keep it real without making it weird. Number 1, set expectations. Instead of automatically saying you're broke, so we got to keep it cheap, how about you try this? I'm all about fun experiences that don't break the bank. But we could find something cool and creative. This keeps things light while making your financial stance very clear. Number 2, Own it with confidence. Say it with your chest. Don't apologize for being mindful of your finances. Instead of saying, sorry, I can't afford that place, how about you try, that looks dope. Let's save this for like a special occasion. Speak a third or fourth or even an anniversary into existence. Suggest a hidden gem, if you will, a nice spot that you know of. Being intentional makes it feel like a thoughtful choice rather than a financial struggle. Number 3, suggest budget-friendly, thoughtful dates. Shift the thought from how much you're spending to how much fun you're having. It's about the experience, remember that. For example, let them know, hey, I know this dope rooftop with an amazing view that we can get some coffee and have a great conversation. Because remember, when the vibe is right, money becomes less of a factor. Number 4, be honest if necessary, but always keep it positive. If finances are tight, you don't have to overshare, just keep it real. That's all. So be like, I'm working towards some financial goals right now, so I'm being smart about my spending. That makes it more about responsibility than a lack of funds. A person that you want to be with should support your financial decisions, especially if it's about being financially responsible. Number 5, you want to show effort in other ways. If you can't splurge on a fancy date, put effort into small gestures, sentimental gestures, things that you could cling on to forever and they don't have to be material. Cooking a small, intimate meal instead of dining out. Again, it's thought, the effort, the experience that matters. And I gave y'all this example before. Plan a creative date, cooking dinner, going to the museum, walking a dope path, or hiking together. Something that, again, will create more of an intimate setting for a connection to be built rather than an expense to be spent and the aesthetic to be captured. Write them a thoughtful note. Make them a playlist. I'm a DJ. I'd make them a playlist. But those things are what really matters when it comes to building a connection, especially if you don't got it. Create moments versus creating expenses. And last but not least, number 6, gauge their reaction. It could tell a lot. If someone makes you feel bad for being financially responsible, that is an ultimate red flag. You want to get away from that person as fast as possible. Or you're going to go broke. That for real, because it's going to fuck with you mentally and it's going to fuck with you financially. Pardon my French. You don't want either of those things. A good partner will appreciate honesty and creativity instead of just a person throwing money around. At the end of the day, it's not about how much you spend. It's about the connection that you make. And if somebody only values you for what's in your wallet, that ain't your person. What's going on, y'all? It's Mr. MoTo, and I just want to thank each and every one of y'all for supporting Nah It's Not Just Me podcast, supporting Vandals TV. Listen, if you want to keep seeing content like this, all you got to do is hit those buttons, all right? Hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button. Hit all the buttons. Just don't hit the thumbs down button. If you hit that one, hit it twice, all right? But again, appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all stay tuned in, Vandals TV. Let's talk about it. All right, so let me put you on one of my experiences. I created this fun-filled day that honestly ended up not costing me much. It was just really about the effort and the experience that I wanted to create with this young lady. Back in my college days, I was so into this one young lady. It was really her style. And, she was pretty as hell, but her swag was just on another level. She was a sneakerhead. And I'm a sucker for a sneakerhead. Nonetheless, I asked her one day, I said, hey, I would love to take some pictures of you. Can you model for my brand at the time? And she was down for it. And after the photo shoot, I asked her out. And from that moment, it was like, damn, all right, man, you got to come up with a dope idea. I'm a recent college grad. I'm trying to figure it out still. So, at the end of the day, everything's on a tight budget. I want it to be a surprise. However, I did plan, but everything that I planned was within my means, down from where we went out to eat to the activity that we did, just overall the whole date. Everything was on a tight budget. So I made sure I picked a good restaurant, location, and something that would have activities to do around there that were within my means. I bought my camera out so I could create the connection by just, taking pictures of her as we were around wherever we was at. I think we were in Williamsburg. So the scenery was dope. So we took a walk around Williamsburg. I took some pictures of her. We went and sat down at a fairly inexpensive restaurant. It was pretty good. It wasn't too pricey, I ain't gonna lie. I think it was called, I knew it was Peruvian and Thai infused. I know that for certain. I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but they had a pineapple chicken that was amazing. So we went to that restaurant. So I think I spent around like $70. I remember this is back then though. So $70 was kind of, it could stretch. We had dinner, we had drinks. I think we even had dessert, all for $70 for 2 people. That was pretty dope. Anywho, so fast forward, we head outside. We start continue our walk around Williamsburg. I'm taking pictures of her. We stop by an ice cream shop, we grab some ice cream, and then we sit by the pier. We're talking. I think we ended up talking for like 2 hours, just sitting by the pier. Sun eventually started to set. And I was like, you know what? I remember having conversations with her of how much she loved funnel cake. And at the time, it wasn't like funnel cake season. So I did my research. Like I said, just a little bit of effort, do some research, and you can find some hidden gems in New York. So in Crown Heights, there was this restaurant that made funnel cake. I told her, hey, I got one last place we got to go to, and then we're good on I'll take you home. We get to the spot, and she's like, oh, we just had dinner. Why are we here somewhere? Because I think they made brick oven pizza there as well. I was like, hey, I was paying attention to, some of the conversations that we had. And I know you mentioned that you really love funnel cake and you were craving it. And, at the time I wanted to go to Coney Island with her, but it was, getting closer to being colder than being nicer. And I think Coney Island was closed at the time, or they had closed for the season. So this restaurant was able to help me get to that one final part of making it a perfect date experience versus how much money I spent. I ordered the funnel cake and I had the waitress bring it out, and she was just elated because, wow, like he found funnel cake and it's not funnel cake season, or like he listened. So all in all, it was creating the experience. It didn't cost me a lot of money. I think altogether at the end of the day, I think I ended up spending like $1.50 and got so much done. Like we went out to eat. We had ice cream. We had funnel cake. We had a great time. We created a vibe. So again, expense is not it. It's more about the experience. Balance that experience over the expense, and money again doesn't become a factor. It's more about the connection that we made and the experience that we shared. It's all possible to date on a budget. Just got to be you got to be a little creative and communicate. You're now tuned into Nah, It's Not Just Me podcast with Mr. MoTo. Let's talk about it. Like I said, budgeting is one of the most integral parts of dating. You got to have a budget. You got to plan no matter what. You could like the person beyond measures, but you still got to know within your means, this is what you're able to do. So dating the right person does matter. But finances matter quite a bit as well. You ask yourself, why do finances matter? Well, it's really because it's still a part of the relationship. It's part of it. No matter what, you need finances to do things, to provide, and to create a sense of stability and security. In the long run, at least. In the early stages, again, do what's within your means. But once you get there, you might want to be able to know that this person is now a line item in my budget, and not making it a financial thing, but every relationship has financial situations that arise. We got to remember, money is a marker of stability and security for some people when it comes to relationships. They got to feel like they could rely on you if need be. Now, is it fair to totally rely on somebody all the time? No, because it should be balanced. we should be able to do for one another. It's the truth. It's the reality of what it's supposed to be, not what we've been being fed, where men got to take care of everything and women just sit there and be pretty. Nah, that will definitely drive you broke. And not for nothing, there's a thin line between being broke and being financially irresponsible. Like I said, broke is a person that you just, there's so much that needs to be fixed, that dating isn't something that should be in your, it shouldn't be in your purview. You should have blinders on. Don't think about dating. Think about getting yourself right, getting yourself in order, and putting yourself in a position to be financially responsible, where you're not spending frivolously. You're planning and you're budgeting so that you don't drive yourself to a place where you might not even be able to drive yourself. You might have to take the bus there. Get what I'm saying? You don't want to go broke trying to impress. You don't want to go broke trying to make somebody feel good just because of the material things that they like. Again, that person's just not for you. Whether you're financially stable or not, that person really ain't for you. The person that should be for you would be a person that understands being financially responsible. Understand that you're good with money management. You're good with discernment and how much you really should be spending when it comes to doing anything. Got to be smart with your spending in order to get to where you want to go goal wise, but also know that that person isn't there for my money. That person is there for me. They're there for that connection. So therefore, anything that I do with my money for that person is just it's a plus. It's a gift. It's to celebrate something. It's not just expected. And when we speak of expectations, society kind of puts us in a place where there's so many expectations these days and so little return. Women expect men to carry a lot of the financial burden when it comes to relationships. I don't want to blanket statement that and say it's all women, but there's a majority out there that will say his money is my money and my money is my money. Or his money is our money and my money is my money. That don't equate. That don't make sense. Again, y'all there together. Y'all building together. And if this is the early part of the relationship, like y'all just dating, y'all just met each other, all that is whoa. Be mindful of how you spend. Okay? Don't let societal pressures force you into doing things that just don't make any sense. Having said that, the question is, does being financially unstable feel the same for men as it does for women? Or is there a big difference? In my opinion, I think there's a huge difference. Men get faced with a lot more pressure when it comes to being financially capable and ready to be in a relationship versus women. In all reality, women aren't the ones that typically date down. Women date up. They date to find that man that's going to take care of them, court them, treat them nice, give them nice things, take them on trips, dinners, blah, 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 etc., etc. The list goes on and on. Men would typically date down and be with a woman that's not financially there or in a position to do for themselves. It's the truth. We don't have to think twice about that. But like I said, being financially unstable is absolutely different for men than it is for women because the expectations aren't the same. For example, let's talk about men. Society often finds men to be the ones that are supposed to take care of the financials in the relationship. Imagine being financially unstable. It already puts you at a disadvantage. There's pressures to pay for dates, pick nice spots, dope experiences, all to impress a woman. Even on a tight budget, you got to be able to do those things. Some women equate financial stability with maturity and stability to be ready for a relationship. So men that aren't financially ready feel undesired and overlooked, to be honest. For men, you might have friends that might clown you and be like, man, you too broke to be focusing on a woman. You better focus on getting your bag. Now, that's great advice. You should focus on your finances, but it shouldn't stop you from finding somebody that you can date that is within your budget and within your means. Many men struggle with pride issues, and they won't even bring up finances. They'll avoid dating at all costs until they're financially stable enough to date. To each his own. Now, when it comes to women, women aren't typically expected to pay for dates, do the heavy lifting, if you will, when it comes to planning. It's not on their plate to handle. So being financially unstable might not impact their dating life as much as it would a man. However, financial independence is becoming much more popular these days. So some men will refuse to date a woman that's struggling financially. It's just not something that they want to take on, especially if it just feels like they're just looking for a provider and not for a true partnership, a true companion, a true connection. In modern dating, some women might feel guilty that they can't provide in this 50-50 world that we're living in. So they feel guilty, and they might not even want to date either until they're prepared to date. Some women might feel stuck in a relationship because financially they're being compensated, so they're willing to deal with any nonsense that comes along with it, whether it be cheating or even a man putting their hands on them, or anybody putting their hands on them for that matter. Again, friends might come in and influence the situation by telling them, listen, you might just date up, find you a man that could pay for everything and take care of you, girl. You a princess, you a queen, you deserve it. Meanwhile, they're not pouring anything into the situation, so it just feels as though the man is just there to be a provider and not to be anything more than that. And if it is more than that, is it really genuine, or is it just because the finances is there and you are being taken care of? So these are some of the things that kind of differentiate men and women when it comes to not being financially stable when dating. Bottom line is, a man that ain't got it is often seen as a man that is undateable. Most women won't date that type of guy. However, a woman that don't really got it like that, struggling financially, that's not really a thought when it comes to men. Like, again, nowadays it might be, but before it wasn't. A woman that's financially struggling might have more options than a man that's financially struggling. That's just true. And sometimes it's just depending on expectations. Both sides deal with insecurities when it comes to money. However, society does put more of the burden on men being more financially stable before finding a suitable partner or dating, if you will. Ultimately, communication, creativity, and shared values really should matter more than the amount of money you spending on somebody. Like, that's how you build a deeper connection. Not by how much you spend, but how much y'all share in common, how much y'all could build together. But let's be real. Finances will always play a dynamic role when it comes to dating and relationships. It's just the truth. So again, I ask you, does dating while you're financially struggling feel different for men versus women? I ain't gonna lie. It feels a lot different for men. Nah, it's not just me. What's up, y'all? It's Mr. MoTo, and do remember, Thursday nights, 7 p.m., Nah, It's Not Just Me podcast. Tap in. You know we always talking about something. So men and women, we got to balance our standards. We got to practice empathy. We got to practice understanding, looking at perspective when it comes to dating while financially struggling. Okay? Because no matter what, even if you're middle class these days, you might still be financially struggling. Doesn't mean you can't find love out here. Doesn't mean you can't find your partner out here. Or if you're in a situation where you're already dating somebody, doesn't mean you got to stop going on dates. You just got to get creative. You got to communicate. You got to talk to one another and be on the same page so that there's understanding. And if there isn't understanding, that person isn't for you. And it's okay to walk away. It might hurt a little bit, but would you rather hurt? Your pockets, or listen to the universe when it's telling you this person ain't for you? They will damage you far beyond your pockets if you stick around. Just saying. What's going on, y'all? It's Mr. MoTo, and let me tell you about Camp What About Us. It's the adult summer camp that you don't want to miss, all right? It's going down June the 13th to June the 15th. We got basketball, softball, kickball, flag football, wall climbing, go-karting. We got tons of events, tons of activities to get into. Oh man, everything from wellness to chilling and just, having a good time. Being nostalgic about being a kid again, man. Remember, June 13th to June 15th, campwhataboutus.com. Sign up. So to all my listeners and followers, for this part, what I would want y'all to do is tap in with me. Let me know some of y'all budget-friendly, conscious dates that y'all have been on. And have they been successful? Or have they been a disaster because the person didn't appreciate being treated on a budget? Tap in with me. Leave it in the comments or call 929-324-1244. Leave a message. Let's talk about it for real. So, all in all, some key takeaways are dating on a budget is possible as long as you have some communication and you sprinkle some creativity in there and always be intentional about what you're doing. Money matters, but it shouldn't overshadow the connection. It really should be always about the connection and the experience. The money, again, is an afterthought because it comes and it goes. Making sure you touch on the shared values that you guys have. That's something to build on. All in all, you can date on a budget. Don't be broke because I think those two things don't go together whatsoever. If you're broke, get fixed, meaning heal yourself. Put yourself in the right place first before you try to go and date. You got to be prepared for that. And if you're in a financial place where you don't really fully got it like that, be creative, communicate, plan, budget. Make sure you are prepared to court somebody. But that somebody has to be that right somebody for you that could understand and appreciate the experience, not the expense. On next week's episode of Nah, It's Not Just Me podcast, you can look forward to us talking about red flags versus green flags. When you see that red flag, think of it like football. That's a challenge flag. That's letting you know something ain't right here. If you see that green flag, that means keep going with that. That's something that's working for you. But I'm going to go into more detail in next week's episode. But in the meantime, you know what to do. Tap in and let's talk about it. I'm out of here. Peace. What's up, y'all? It's Mr. MoTo. And do remember, Thursday nights, 7 p.m., Nah, It's Not Just Me podcast. Tap in. You know we always talking about something.